Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, Connected Life peeps. We're here again in Justin's Nerd Cave.
Dun, dun, dun.
We've returned to the action figure room.
I love it. I love recording in our house. It makes me feel like I'm not actually recording a podcast. It makes me feel like I'm just having a conversation.
Yes, and since last conversation we had, Abby has been in a car wreck, got hit by a driver under the influence, and
driver.
And she is cracked out of her mind on medication.
Muscle relaxers. Let's specify. They didn't give me any of the good stuff.
Not the goods.
I'm not on the goods.
Yeah, well, you got it. We gave you a quarter of a tablet.
I am purposefully not taking.
Yeah, because that stuff's horrible.
My mom was a drug addict.
Yeah,
a prescription drug addict. And I thought seriously after this accident, I was like, God, it'd be so great if I could get on Vicodin. And then I thought, oh, that's what my mom thought. And then I remembered that all opioids open up your pain receptors. So while they feel like they're helping the pain,
not.
They make it so that you continue to feel more pain, which is actually a really great analogy for life.
And a great analogy for what we're going to open up into. Well done. I don't even know how we did that.
Yes. Yeah. So I literally had no problem saying no because I was like, I don't want to be in more pain. And I know this is what it leads to.
Yeah.
So just suck it up.
Yeah. Well, Speaking of pain, last week we started into a conversation about messiness. And if you haven't listened to that, it's a great episode to go listen to about embracing the reality of our messiness, not trying to hide it, not trying to lie about it, because it really keeps us from being able to get healing and freedom, and it really keeps us from getting out of shame cycles.
Yeah.
And so this week we have some special guests on the show with us. Another Justin.
Ooh.
Which I don't even know. What are we going to call this other Justin? Are we just going to call you Other Justin?
Yeah, Other Justin.
I mean, some people just call me Beard.
Some people just call you Beard, Justin Beard.
My last, our last name.
Yeah, we can call you Beardy.
Beardy McGee.
And any of those.
We have Justin and his wife, Jess. And Jess is part of our world.
Yeah, Jess did Living Fully Alive, our Living Fully Alive course. And then she joined the consulting mastermind. And now she is interning in our life consulting master class. So now she is helping other people as they're going through the process of learning and growing. And she is a consultant that is working with us.
Yeah. And what I love is that the story we're about to get into is that they're in the middle of still their messiness and working through that process. And none of that disqualifies them, just like our messiness doesn't disqualify us.
Yeah.
And we're going to go kind of do a deep dive into their world.
Meanwhile, I just want to say a caveat on that. Like, I don't believe, like in a lot of circles, people decide that they are masters at something before they've actually learned about it. So while I'm in the middle of my mess, I may not be like I've seen that happen a lot. I've seen like somebody is in the middle of an addiction and then they say that they're an addiction specialist. So I'm not endorsing that, even though we do say messiness doesn't disqualify you. It also doesn't make you an expert.
It helps to have some stability in areas.
Yes. I want to because you want to find somebody that doesn't have their life perfect, but you want to find somebody that's overcome some stuff.
Yeah. And that's something that I believe that Jess has done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that was not a comment on them. That was just a comment on society in general as a whole. Because we see that. I see that a lot, don't you?
Yeah. And I know people that are in the middle of highly destructive cycles and
they're trying to help people and it doesn't work. You can only take people where you've been.
Yeah. So it's good to have some history behind your belt. So
yes.
With that said, how do we want to introduce this circumstance?
Well, this is Jess and Justin Beard, and you guys want to say hi?
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, really excited. Well, how'd you find us? Through the Connected Life? Is that how we first met?
Yeah, I have been a diehard since your first episode.
So, that's super cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then I got to meet you guys when you came to Cleveland, which was really cool.
You made us breakfast, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember.
Because we have food allergies in our house. So they're like, Dad, you'll know about this. I was like, yes, I do.
It's very true. Very true. Okay. And so why don't you guys just jump into your story?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think really we kind of discussed like where does this begin? And I think, really where it started is we met and we kind of just initiated a relationship. And one of the, I guess, foundational cornerstones of that relationship was shared trauma, which I don't think we even really had language for at that point. But, just kind of very briefly, when I was 16, my mom actually committed suicide. And then Jess, you can share about your mom.
Oh, yeah. When I was 17, my mom died from liver failure from being an alcoholic.
Oh my gosh. So you guys literally same age, same trauma.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was like a big, I guess, bonding point for us.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because not a lot of people have experienced that.
Yeah.
No.
So it was like,
there's probably a place where you didn't feel alone.
Suddenly.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we met, I had just graduated high school and I lived in Ohio and Justin lived in North Carolina. And so we dated kind of
like long distance for a couple of years. Yeah.
And then we ended up getting married. And this is kind of an important part of the story. So when we got married, my dad is kind of a free thinker. He's been a free thinker for a long time. And he encouraged us to not get a marriage license when we were getting married.
Love it.
Not inviting the state into your holy.
I love it. A free thinker.
Which we were like, oh, I mean, I was very close to my dad. Yeah. So I was like, whatever you want, Dad, that's what we're going to do. But it caused a lot of problems for us later. And so that's why I feel like it was a big, it was like an important detail. So important, in fact, Justin's family did not come to our wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Because you weren't going to sign paperwork to the state? They found out about it and they're like, not going to do it? Wow.
Yeah, which was really hard at the time. But we were young and like...
Are you guys 8s?
What?
Are one of you guys an 8?
I'm a 7, 100% 7, wing 8.
Okay. And Justin, what about you?
I've gotten different results from different quizzes, but Jess tells me I'm very much a 1, and I'm convinced now I'm a 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Both of those have strong, I can make a decision, a sense of self.
Oh yeah. And like, we were 20, so we knew everything. Yeah. And
this was after I had already, not followed any of my dad's plans for me to immediately go to college out of high school. We went, we lived in England for a year, we were doing our own thing kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we lived in England for a year doing a mission training program, and we got home like the middle of summer, got married the end of summer, and the next weekend we flew to Nigeria, and we lived in Nigeria for on and off for 3 years. It will be part of the story, but
it's an intense first start. I mean, I've known a lot of couples who do that, and people always want to start a new adventure right when they get married, and I don't know that there's a value that people have heard that being around community when you first get married is really important. Because when you start a new adventure, now your spouse has to meet all of your relational needs because you don't have any other ones. And now you're not getting poured into, and now your love tanks are low when you're starting a complex part of connecting anyway.
Absolutely.
In retrospect, could not agree more.
Yeah.
We encourage what you just said. Like if anyone ever tells us they're getting married, we're like, don't go be a missionary right away.
You've told me a lot. This is something we've more recently kind of recognized about ourselves, kind of going through our healing process, but escapism for you, but really even also for me, I think, as I've been kind of mulling it over, maybe not as overt, but I almost see the escapism and let's run away to England. Let's run away to Nigeria.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
I was a professional escape artist.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys were
what?
So you guys were professionally escaping, and what happened with that?
Well, it
seemed cool at the time,
mess.
in some ways.
So what happened was we get to Nigeria. It's so intense. It's so hard. We had no community. We did not have a church home or anything. We lived and worked for we were teachers at a school.
Ate, slept, and breathed school. That was it.
Yes.
Wow.
Because back then, it's so interesting telling the story after going through all of the healing, because I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh. Back then, which I feel like this is a big thing for a lot of missionaries, but I felt like I was having to earn God's love. So of course, I'm working from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. I didn't know boundaries were a thing at all. And so we basically just worked. And there was a problem.
It didn't leave us a lot of time to work on us, I guess, if I'm thinking about it from that perspective.
No. But also something that I learned in church, which a lot of people do, is that sex is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very common theme
within religion. Yeah.
Or just that there's a lot of shame sort of associated with it and around it in general. So don't talk about it. And,
yeah. But
even in healthy circumstances, within marriage, it becomes convoluted by that.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And so, there's lots of parts of our story that are not our favorite parts, but
I don't think many of This is where you're going to talk about my brain tumor?
No, so you didn't know about it. This is the part I'm going to talk about.
Spoiler alert. Sorry about that.
Where we were not having any sex. We weren't, because we couldn't when we got married.
Minimal. Well, I see Justin be like, it was minimal. It might have been there, but it was minimal.
It wasn't non-existent.
It was mostly non-existent.
It was a struggle because
it was a really
go ahead.
difficult. It was difficult, and I grew up that sex was bad, and I'm in my head, and I'm a missionary, and I'm trying to figure out if it's bad, then this is probably good, and it's terrible saying that now, but that's what I believed then.
So it was probably good that you guys weren't having it, because with the mindset is what I hear you saying. I believed it was bad, so it was good that you weren't able to.
Well, I think I was, what's the word?
Justifying it? Or...
Yeah, justifying it.
Yeah,
that's what
I mean. Yeah.
This is fine. This is fine. It was not fine. And so we ended up leaving Nigeria. I think we were there for a year and a half. And then we came home, and we were going to go to the International House of Prayer. But when we got home, we were like, oh, you need money to go there, and we don't have any money. So we couldn't go there. So we had to think of a new plan. And we decided, it was after Hurricane Katrina had hit. It hit in the fall of whatever year it was. And then we came home at Christmas. So the church we were a part of was taking missions trips every week down there. And so we went on one together down there. And then Justin got a job, and I wasn't working. And so I went again just down there to do cleanup. It was just real messy. And also during that time, I feel like this is important to note. So we just came back off the mission field, and we're trying to adjust to American life again, because we're living in Nigeria, which is very
non-American.
Yeah.
Not American at all. We loved it, but not American. And so we were going to a church, and I didn't have a job. And so I was like, hey, can I volunteer here? Can you, I'll give you all my hours. I have nothing else to do. And they were like, no, we really don't need your help. And I was like,
thanks, but no thanks. And that really, she already kind of mentioned she had this, and this even kind of goes back probably beyond the scope of the story, but just needing to have fulfillment through achievement in the church, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was a big button to be pressed for you.
Oh, it was huge. And I didn't realize it, like how huge it was. And so when that happened, it felt like a huge rejection from God, because I was like, you, like, God doesn't want me even, you know? So that was really hard.
I want to pause there because it's a really common story that I've heard over and over and over again, is when there is a church rejection, because church represents God, even if we consciously don't think that that's what God feels towards us, it's so easy for us to subconsciously start to believe that. And I've been on both sides. I've been on the side where I've had to be like, actually, I don't think this is the season for you to be helping right now. And so I don't think it's villainous for churches to say no, but I also know it can cause, I mean, most people I know, it's caused really, really deep wounding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like a side note was like, my dad basically kind of abandoned us to church. So I learned that to earn my dad's love, I had to win at church.
So now you're not allowed to win at church.
That's like ultimate win, like level 10, you know? And so when it was like, I couldn't work at church, I was like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
So being the professional escape artist that we're like, you know what? Let's just move to New Orleans. That will be perfect. We'll just go down there. They need help. They definitely need us. So
they'll take us.
Which I think is like a very common, when we're scared to deal with our own mess, it's easier to find messier people than us. Messier in quotes, because it's not necessarily true. But people who are in more of a crisis, like I know so many people that their internal world is chaos, and the way that they deal with that is by being around trauma.
Yeah.
Like I have a friend who's like just started doing trauma therapy and now is running and doing tons of things in the Ukraine, whatever. And I'm like, because it actually feels familiar. It feels safe. It feels like home to be in the middle of chaos, to be in the middle of trauma, to be where things are high stakes. And you don't have time to think about your own pain when it's all consuming in front of you. Yeah. And so it's not bad. I think like, obviously we need to be helping people in trauma. Totally. And I'm so thankful for the people who have the capacity to do that, because not everybody does. But at the same time, it's that self-awareness of, how am I doing?
I escaping something inside of me?
Am I keeping chaos in my life because it's comfortable?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so we decided to get out of here. And I mean, at the time there was nothing here for us anyway. We're just living with my dad and just kind of waiting for the next thing. And so we moved down to New Orleans. We lived in a church.
Wow.
And we started like drinking every night while living in the church.
Totally.
As one does.
We would drink till late at night. And then our job to live in the church was to make breakfast in the morning for the crews that lived there. So we'd get up like 5 a.m. and make breakfast after heavily drinking.
Always a fun thing to do with a hangover.
Oh, yes.
Oh, man.
I know. Sorry, Bruce. So, and let me tell you, if you haven't been to New Orleans, they have these special deals on Sunday where it's like buy 1 beer, get 3 for free.
No, I should advertise that.
It's very easy.
We shouldn't advertise that. Justin's like,
sorry.
You're hysterical.
I'm just saying it's very easy to get, and because my mom was an alcoholic, I was so focused on not becoming like my mom.
Yeah.
And that's, part of why we got married young is not going to become like my parents. And so if doing the right things for the wrong reasons is wrong and not great. And so anyway, I fell right into that hole of alcohol drinking, which only led to making more bad decisions. And unfortunately, it led to me cheating on Justin because I had, I was not in my right mind, and just, one bad decision leads to more bad decisions. And
can I ask, would it be okay if I asked a little bit more about that? When you said cheating on Justin, what does that mean? You found another relationship? It was a one-time sexual one night stand? What does that mean? Just to get clear.
Well, we had like a group of friends while we were down there and who we kind of hung out with a lot. And one of the guys, like I knew from like a long time ago from like high school time. We had just kind of reconnected and we were all like kind of in the same friend group. And like one day there, like we all got very wasted. Justin included. He was blacked out. I think we were trashed.
Out. Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He was not his best self. And so it was a one-time thing.
Okay.
And the next morning I said, immediately when I woke up, I said, we have to get out of here. Like we have to get out of New Orleans. This is not good.
Didn't know why at that point.
He didn't know why. I was like, we can't keep doing this. And so,
right, because also Justin, you obviously didn't know that she had that sexual one night stand. And so you're just like, why do we got to get out of here? We're great coping here.
No, go ahead.
I don't know. Well, I mean, also while we were down there was when I found out about the brain tumor that I mentioned earlier.
Wow.
Which was it was a pituitary prolactinoma that was actually affecting my performance, quite frankly. So that was kind of part of the
sexual
problem.
Performance or just performance in life?
Yes.
No,
I mean,
you literally had a brain tumor
I think,
that was affecting your sex life.
Right. So that was a part of, I wasn't sure where to bring that in, but that was definitely part of the challenge,
Yeah.
That's a challenge. Most understated comment.
Yeah.
How did you find out you had a brain tumor?
So I figured this might be the place that was in New Orleans was where I found that out. Or it was while we were staying there.
He went to see his parents. His parents live in North Carolina and his dad is a general practitioner doctor. Mm-hmm. And so he mentioned to his dad that he was having bad headaches and your dad
I actually told him also, that we were having bedroom problems, and it's hard to say that to your dad.
Oh yeah.
So it took me a while to get to that point, but at that point it was, I didn't know the full extent of everything, but it was to the point where this is destroying our relationship. And so I need to do something.
And it was probably hard to tell your dad because he didn't even come to our wedding and they didn't even let us stay in their house.
Wow. So that was really scary and risk taking to say, hey dad, I'm going to open up about this when you already feel like you have disapproval about us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then he suggested you get checked out.
Yeah. So there was some blood work and they found my hormone levels were completely out of whack. And he kind of started, even before I got like an MRI or anything, started floating out like, oh, it could be brain tumor. I was like, wait, hold on. Like, pause.
Wow. So he kind of just like slid that in there.
Just kind of threw that little sprinkle that in the conversation. So I was like, okay. And then it actually was that after, an MRI, there was like a grape-sized tumor in there.
Wow.
Secreting all kinds of hormones and blocking all kinds of other hormones and messing everything up.
Wow. Real quick question.
I should mention not cancerous, thankfully.
Yeah.
And ultimately was able to be treated entirely just with medication. They didn't have to crack my skull open and dig something like that. Yes. So, medication and we also, believe like miraculous healing, but
yeah.
Anyway, maybe back to your part of the story now. That's kind of an aside, I guess.
Well, it's a huge part of the whole thing. And
significant.
So you were probably, I could imagine you were spiraling out probably at that point, knowing that you had a tumor. Yeah. Is that, or no?
Yeah. I mean, when you first hear like brain tumor, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to die. That's
pass me another bottle. I need a drink.
Yeah.
This is horrible. No, I would have been overwhelmed because you were in your, about 24, 25 or something?
Not even. Because we had our first
21 or 22. Yeah. It was
wow.
We got pregnant with our oldest daughter when we were 23. So we got married at 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you guys are babies.
That is so much to handle at that age. Yeah, yes. Totally. Real quick question that I have, when Jess shares just even about reflecting on, I had that one night stand when we were drunk. Does that provoke any emotions at this point inside of you currently in life, Justin? Or
it still does. I'm, I'm still human. I just, I think every time we talk about it, it's interesting because we were discussing, like, we've never really sat down, like she's told her side of the story to probably, more times and to more people than I have. And we've obviously talked about it with each other, but we haven't like sat down and like told it to someone else together before.
So this is more like a first time together?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that's super brave.
Very brave.
Thank you.
I feel really honored that you'd bring it to this space and allow us to partake in that together.
Yeah. And I, so I do kind of just try to check in, I guess, with my heart, as Jess has taught me to do. And just kind of see, like, what is this? Because it just might feel kind of like a hot feeling of like pressure in my chest or something, but I think both for her side and my side, right, I get a lot of intense emotions. So we'll just kind of see how that goes, I guess, as we actually progress through it. But I think one of our goals with this is to get things out in the open and remove shame from those things, and hopefully just be, kind of a work in progress example of, something that people can look at. Because, the awesome thing is, well, I'm probably going to be getting ahead of myself. Maybe I'll just stop right there for now.
Okay. That's good. And I
love some foreshadowing. So if you want to go there, you can.
Well, I appreciate that you guys are being willing to do this. One practical question: how long ago was that now? Since that's happened?
So
16 years ago. It was like 16 years ago.
We went to Nigeria in 2004 after getting married, and then we were there kind of from 2004 to 2008, but back in the middle of that was like. Yeah.
We're going to be married for 18 years this year, which is crazy. And it was in our second year of marriage. So that's why I just say 16.
Okay. So about 16 years ago. Okay. I just want to kind of context for like, okay, was this a yesterday thing? How old are you guys? For people like listening, being able to go, okay, this is 16 years ago. They've been in a 16-year process since but we don't even know when that came out. So I want to continue on and find out how that kind of evolved. So you decided to leave and head out of Dodge. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So we ended up leaving and just going back to Cleveland. That's where we live now. That's where my family is. And they've always been like open to us, like always had open doors and stuff. So we went back home to try to like figure out the next thing. And meanwhile, like every day I was like, I have to tell him. No, I'm not going to tell him. I have to tell him.
Yeah,
no, I'm not going to tell him.
So overwhelming.
Yeah, it was really intense. But like in my heart, I knew that I wanted to like stay married. And like, I think for me, I had a lot of fear because I really wanted to be a mom. Like that's what I always wanted to be. And so knowing like that we were not having sex and stuff, that was like really scary because
you have
children.
Yeah.
So like for me, once his brain tumor got sorted out, like things were really
good,
like a lot better. And so in my heart, like I knew like I want to stay together, work things out, but I was just like scared to death.
Which, by the way, I want to add the fact that exchange that happened between you and another man, given your history, especially with the church and shame around sexuality. I mean, like it's already a difficult deal to deal with in any relationship, but when you have that foundation, I mean, that must have been really burning away at you internally.
Oh, yeah. Especially like as a missionary, it was like I felt like I had no one to talk to about it at all. Yeah. Which was really hard.
Whenever we have any secrets that we can't tell anyone, it literally eats us from the inside. It like we have to internalize it, and it begins slowly eroding because we're meant to be a safe place for ourselves. If we can't be a safe place for us, then we have nowhere to rest. And when we have a secret that we can't say out loud, it begins creating this disunity, this disharmony, this dissonance within us that creates that place where you never get to fully let down and relax and feel safe and connected. So, and it's so interesting listening to this story, because this is so true about most marriages, is we just go through things. And especially if we're not sharing, like you guys probably weren't telling people you were having sex issues until he talked to his dad. And this happens in so many relationships where they don't share. And so then this thing just grows, the walls grow, or the separation grows, or you have pain grow like you did, Jess, where you have all this pain, you're processing, will I be able to have kids? All of those things on your own. And so pain, when we share with other people, we can get comfort, we can get resources, we can get connection. And when we let it eat us on the inside, it ends up, pain always leads us towards destructive decisions. Always. If we don't deal with it, if we don't face it, if we don't allow love into it, if we don't get help for it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you have all this pain going on inside, trauma from your childhood, then you get married, trauma around sexuality, you don't know what your future is going to be, lots of instability. When our lives feel in chaos, the pain often leads us to a choice that creates more chaos.
Yeah.
But nobody knows that at 20.
No. I mean, we knew everything, but I didn't know that thing.
Yeah.
Totally.
No, and also, I just had so much fear, like, around being found out. Like, I was so sorry, and I wanted to tell him, and it was just like, how can I tell him without crushing him? Because also we weren't really great at communicating, obviously. So like, because he was having issues already, I wasn't going to be like, tell him that I'm scared we're never going to have kids, so that was just a major block. I felt like I couldn't talk to him about what I was feeling either.
Yeah, did you have shame around sexuality stuff back then, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was just, the standard, I grew up in the South and Baptist, so that's just part of the package, pretty much.
Then like, as you get married and now you don't know that you have a brain tumor, did that cause shame?
I mean, I felt, like a whole spectrum of emotions of, not being able to like just perform the way I wanted to. And that, I mean, we didn't, we were new to it. Right. Like, we were some of those weird people that like, saved ourselves for marriage. So we like,
totally,
we didn't know at that point either. Like, oh, maybe we just don't know how to do things right. Or,
what's funny, by the way, is they tell you, the religious institution tells you to save yourself for marriage, but then they say, but let's not talk about it. So good luck when you go to try and figure it out. Fingers crossed, everybody, because we're not going to sit down and have a deep, non-shameful conversation to tell you like, hey, let's explore what you actually need to do. It's really sets no one up for success.
No, that is so true.
So true.
Anyway, sorry, continue on. Did you have more you were saying, Justin?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you eventually tell him?
Yes.
I'm imagining, or else this would be a very wild podcast.
Surprise. No, I told him, and that was like the worst moment of my life, probably.
How did he well, let me ask this, Justin. Initially when she told you, what was it? Just did it feel like ears ringing and bomb went off or something, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I remember actually and as she mentioned, we were staying in the house with my father-in-law, so I was just like on the floor screaming into the carpet as loud as I could.
That makes sense.
Yeah. He could hear that, of course.
He's like, what the hell is going on?
What's wrong? And I don't even remember what we told him, but we didn't tell him what was wrong for real. So
no. So if my dad listens to this podcast, hell now and
Totally.
And so how do you process that, Justin? Like what'd you guys do?
Man, it's been a while now, but I remember just spending some time. Actually, it's interesting because we live right around the corner from this place now, but I remember going to Whip's Ledges shortly after, which is just this pretty place around us to just sort of hike and explore, just to kind of get some time together and, you know, try to process things. What else?
What we were really good at was just shoving it down, covering it up. That's what we really did.
Well, and here's one thing that stands out to me too, is I knew that it was my job to immediately forgive her.
Right.
And, you know, so I just did my kind of Christian duty. And I was like, well, I forgive you because I have to do that. And I wanted to, I really wanted to forgive her and continue in the relationship, but I didn't know how at that point, and I hadn't even felt the full weight of it to be able to, you know, I didn't even, there was things that hadn't even hit me yet. I couldn't forgive him, you know, that was not there yet to forgive almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also we were such different people back then. Like I was the boss in our relationship and Justin, you're probably like a 1-wing-9.
I mean, at that point, you probably had more testosterone than I did.
That's funny. Might be true.
Yeah, I mean, I've got strong 8-wing of like, we're doing this. And then the 7 of like, we're going here. We're like, I would just make all the decisions. And like, I didn't want to be doing that either. And I just, he was a different person.
I wasn't stepping up as a leader.
He wasn't.
Yeah. And so she basically was just filling that vacuum, that void in our relationship.
Yeah. And we never fought. Like that is the thing that was like,
that's how you could tell something was wrong.
Yeah.
That's how you knew everything was perfect. We don't fight. We have a great relationship.
Yeah, we hardly ever fought. And if we did, he was always the first one to be like, I'm so sorry. Can we make this right? And I'd be like, no, I want to be mad. And
you can't let the sun go down on your anger. That's another thing.
Yeah, I know that.
My duty.
Yeah.
To do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys understand. We were really good Christians.
You know, the best Christians create the best messes. Because if you follow all of the rules without taking care of your heart, there's no way for your heart not to explode in another area.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You have to figure out how to take care of your heart. And Christianity was never meant to be a rule system. It was meant to be a life-giving, lead you into more connection and wholeness to yourself system.
Yeah, that's so good. So after I told him, we were kind of just trying to figure out what to do. And our people from Nigeria emailed us and were like, hey, we just lost a bunch of our teachers. Do you guys want to come back? We're like, well, we don't have anything else going on. So sure.
Wow. Diving right back into Nigeria.
Which then enables you
I remember thinking like, I don't think we're ready for this, but I was not really the one leading things at that time.
Yeah.
So do you think you even had a voice about that? Do you think you said, I don't think we're ready for this? Or do you think you just thought it?
I did say something to that effect. I did say it, but it didn't really matter.
I was probably like, it's fine. It'll be fine.
And kind of another example, which this is kind of a backtrack, but I feel like it's why you mentioned or one of the reasons why you kind of thought the marriage license thing was significant is because before, like when we were just having trouble, like there was just cruelty happening in our relationship. And like, I was like, we're literally living in a church. They have counselors here. We should get counseling. And Jess was like, nope. And I don't think you really made this clear to me at that time, excuse me, but like later on, even really just recently in our discussions, it was
like within the last few years, I realized it.
Relatively recently, I guess. Was that it was because of that, like you thought that was going to be the first question they asked you when you went into counseling. Like, you guys, of course, have your marriage license. We're going to need to review that as they do in counseling.
Well, I was told, so when we were missionaries in England before we got married, and I asked the pastor there if he would marry us. And he was like, well, no, because I can't marry you because you guys live because he has his whatever in England and it wouldn't transfer to America. And I was like, well, what if we didn't get a marriage license? He was like, oh, you'll never be able to work in a church if you don't have that. So
oh wow, yeah. So there was definitely a
find out
process.
we were working here with no marriage license. Yeah.
So I internalized that. He had no idea because he wasn't part of that conversation. And so I internalized that. And so I was like, no church can ever know about this.
Oh.
Yes. And actually, fast forward a few years, we started coming to Bethel, which is the first prophetic church we ever attended. And I was like, oh no, I would show up so scared every week because I was like, someone's going to tell about my story from the stage. I was just
they're going to use their.
So there's this idea that within a culture that maybe hears the heart of God, feels like they can hear God's heart on stuff, that it would be that they would hear about something horrible that you've done, and then they would dialogue about it publicly and humiliate you.
Yes.
Wow.
That was our first experience with prophetic, which our church never did that ever and had no intention. But being so naive, I was like, surely they're going to do this.
Just wrong assumptions on our part is all that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we ended up going back to Nigeria, which was, I don't know, it was okay.
Yeah. And so, we had unresolved stuff, obviously, at that point. During that time, there was someone that worked at the school that I had, I guess, I would classify it as sort of a fling, if you will. Things happened. It didn't go super far, but it was definitely inappropriate.
That you participated in there.
That I participated in. Yeah, it was me. And which while we were still there, I did confess that to Jess. So that was just what happened significantly, I think, about our trip back to Nigeria, at least as part of the story.
So you're probably in pain after finding out that she just had an affair, or I don't know.
Definitely feeling probably some levels of disposable or unlovable. And it felt like, someone else is interested in me or chooses me or desires me. Would that be language that you felt?
Yeah. And even just kind of emasculated, honestly, after that whole experience with the tumor and, so there's a lot of that going on that I was just kind of grappling with. When I just kind of went after, it was not, it wasn't anyone particularly special necessarily. Everyone's special, but you know what I mean?
It wasn't this person means so much to me. And it was hey, I feel what's
and
that?
I knew the person also. And it was, it was not anything that was ever going to last anyway.
Right. It wasn't like, this feels like it threatens our relationship because there's so much chemistry and connection with this other person.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But another significant thing that happened when we were in Nigeria was we got pregnant with our daughter, Chai. And that was and I think once we got pregnant, it just I don't know. It felt like we finally were putting all this nonsense kind of behind us. That's what it kind of felt like.
Right. Okay, we're good. Let's move forward.
Blank
got a
slate.
baby.
Let's start over.
Yeah.
Build a family.
Yes. And I forget, it was really painful to me to find out about him. But, at the same time, I'm like, well, I deserve it. And just remember choosing to forgive because I really loved Justin the whole time. The whole time we really loved each other. We just couldn't.
Yeah. We were just bad at it.
That's real.
We had good intention. We were bad at, we loved each other. We were bad at love. We forgave each other. We were bad at forgiveness. But
the truth is, we both came from such broken homes.
Totally.
I didn't even know that people enjoyed being married. So I'm I guess this is what marriage is.
Totally.
I just thought that there was no very happy marriages, and I didn't know differently.
And I don't think even despite, the extent of my experience growing up, I didn't really realize that our family was it seems very obvious in retrospect. I realized that, but I didn't realize that our family was dysfunctional growing up.
Nobody notices. Well, some people notice, but whatever your normal is normal to you. you're desensitized to it. People are desensitized to what they grew up in.
And I say this even, very tenderly with it, because it's sensitive, but obviously your mom had committed suicide, and there's a big blaring like, oh, there's a really, really painful situation that's going on in my family. And to be able to go like, oh, I still didn't realize, that there was actual problems in the family. It's easy or how traumatic it was. Mm-hmm. We can like minimize it down to an event like, oh, this event just happened and it's a horrible event, but we don't like, we're not able to actually connect to the realities, even with an event of that magnitude, until later on when we start looking and getting honest with ourselves. Because it is so painful.
And like, you didn't know you grew up in an abusive home.
No
I didn't
idea.
know, like I didn't even think through the fact that my mom was a drug mentally
addict,
ill hoarder. Like none of that even occurred to me.
Yeah, because like even when I talk to you, you're like, I had the best family ever, like, and everything's perfect. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, all of this behavior confuses me then.
Anyway,
I mean, that was me. Like, I thought my family was great, and I would just like, it was challenging, and I would be like, why can't your family be more like my family?
Right.
Well, that was
denial all day long.
That was, I mean, honestly, another element of the story too. Like, her family was the good guys, because my family had basically disowned us when we got married. And I mean, we did eventually build that relationship back up. And actually it's kind of interesting. We're at the grandkids part of the story, more or less, because that grandkids cover a multitude of sins.
Yes.
Right.
Come into the picture, suddenly the grandparents are interested, which is great, as it should be.
But it changes some stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get caught up to present time.
Okay, so present time.
So there's a good, still plenty. So, and I don't remember at which point this began to happen, but Jess started to let me know that she felt convicted that we needed to actually share this story. So I think that's actually another reason that we kind of find ourselves here today. And honestly, like it is a true honor to be here and be able to share this on your platform. But, and I was like, no, thanks,
Well, and to be fair, I've told my story. It was always my story of messing up, and I would tell all my friends, because I remember, I don't know if you guys have read the Ragamuffin Gospel, but there was something in it where he was talking about like vulnerability and like how people can't know you. And so I read that, and immediately I reached out to my best friends at the time, and I was like, hey, you need to know this about me, because I feel like you don't know me. And so I've been throughout all these 15 years talking to people personally and one-on-one, or if people have had marriage things, they'll come to me and I talk to them. And I always would say to him, hey, we should talk about it. And he would just get real quiet. And I would be like, oh, I guess he's still mad at me. That's where I was at, where I was like, oh, I guess he's not, I don't want to cause him pain. And so I would just be like, okay, well, whenever you're ready. That's kind of where it was. And so finally I was like, you know what? I really just need to tell this story finally.
She was going to go rogue. So she was in this group, and she was going to post online, basically just a video of her telling, pretty much what we've told you so far. And, she wanted me to look at it and give me an opportunity to veto or say this needs to be changed or whatever. And I just kind of broke down, and I was like, you can't share that. That's not the whole story. And then I just had to confess, there was basically, so I eventually, had gotten jobs where I was traveling a lot. And I estimate about maybe a 6-year period, there were about a similar number of women where there was another encounter of some type of sexual nature, while I was on the road traveling. It different varying degrees, but it was, basically a one night stand type thing, while I was on the road. It's kind of interesting too, because I feel like I've told this a couple times now, and I'm still kind of fighting with the shame a little bit. As I'm saying this, to be honest, but
yeah. Are you feeling a lot of anxiety?
And this was something, where I was like, I feel like I might just take this to the grave.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was like weighing pros and cons of like just this coming out at the judgment seat or something. I'm like, well, we're already dead. You can't kill me. But it was like that. I did wonder, but you're right. I mean, Abby, when you're talking about like these things, they just eat you. That's absolutely true. And so it was eating me for a while, and I'm so thankful, that it was like, I can't let something be put out that's not the whole truth.
Wow.
That doesn't show the full side. And that is one thing that I find, I think, mutually encouraging about our story is, we both, for me, it took much longer than it took Jess, but we both came to each other, and chose to come clean. Nothing forced us to. And Jess was unbelievably gracious to me in this moment that I thought would like permanently nuke our marriage.
Wow.
And sorry. This is in that same conversation, like she was able to, and this is how far she's come too, just through all of her training as a life consultant and all of the work that she's done, to be able to say, hey, like, she was very hurt, and we had a lot of really tough days after that, but, we're still married and still love each other and actually like being around each other. And, but she was in that moment even saying, like, I recognize how this is tied to the trauma from your mom and everything. For her to be able to have like the capacity to even have that kind of compassion in that moment was unbelievable to me.
Wow.
First off, thank you for the bravery in that moment, talking about that and opening that up. Obviously, there's, like you said, there's shame. There's, at some level, it feels coming up, anxiety, probably a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's really amazing. And even Jess, your participation, saying like, yeah, I want him to be able to share that too as well. And I don't feel like you wanted you guys to come on here and have this conversation so that you could oust his portion of the story more. It's just like, hey, this is where we're at. Just for sake of like clarity, were you saying that there were multiple times that happened?
Yes.
Throughout the 6 years?
Yeah, like about the same number. It was
probably about 6 times.
Number of women. Yeah, about 6, I think.
Okay. I only asked that because I just wanted clarity. I didn't want to create wrong assumptions inside of my head about what that looked like. I thought maybe it was just one over the 6 years, and not just. That's probably not the way to say it.
You are failing at this life consulting thing, Justin.
Yeah, totally.
Not say that.
But I wanted to understand like the complexities of what that looked like. And it sounds like, Jess, you're able to meet him in that. But I'm curious, like, where you're at in the process and how you're working through resolving portions of this. If you,
well, how long ago did he tell you?
I think it was October or November.
So like
sometime
within
late
the last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe 5 months ago or less. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
and
what is time?
Can we start with, I'm going to interrupt your question for a second, but can we start with just what did you actually think and feel when he was telling you?
Oh man, it was so painful. I was like, crap. I was just like, no. It was really hard for me because we have a friend one time who was like, do you think anyone loves each other as much as we do? And she was like, yeah, the Beards, because we love each other. It was like we had this thriving, fun marriage. And so I think it was just like a big blow of like, what?
Felt like a big lie.
Yeah. And he was removed from it for there was a couple years between. So I'm like, you've been holding this for like years. And then it made me just feel like, I think that was hard for me because I felt authenticity is really important to me. I tried to be very authentic and it felt like, oh my gosh, I feel like I was living a lie, you know, and I just didn't like that. And it was very painful, like very, very painful. But immediately I was like, okay, to move forward, I gave him like a couple things that I needed, which was one, you have to meet with a life consultant immediately. Like that is it. And he's been meeting with Marcus since.
Oh, Marcus is incredible, isn't he?
So incredible. Yeah. I think we've had maybe a total of one session where I wasn't like in tears, but in a good way, though.
Yeah.
So one was you have to meet with a life consultant. Two, he has a men's group. I was like, you're telling your men's group like right now or like your next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And
I still can remember how my chest felt in that meeting too, because I was like, this is what this group is here for. It's accountability. So,
was there anything else that I said?
We were reading.
We decided to read Unpunishable together by Danny Silk.
Yeah.
And because I had read it by on my own, and but then it was like really impactful to read it together. And so those were like my three things, and he did them
and there's
willingly.
A few more just practical things, right? I mean, you can tell in our story. Well, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was drinking plenty on the road also. So that was an element at any of these like downfall moments.
Right.
Yep.
So there's just like a rule that if I go on a work trip, I don't drink. There's been fewer of those in recent times. And I actually am switching to a new job that will hopefully have a little bit less travel too.
Yeah.
Can I ask Jess a quick question? Jess, what do you, because it's pretty fresh, right? And you guys are like in the throes of like figuring out how to repair this portion of a marriage that felt very hidden and betrayal and levels and stuff. How do you do with even him going on trips traveling? Like what happens for you? Insecurity, pain, fear, or do you have emotions like that come up?
You know what? He actually hasn't had a work trip since he told me, to be honest. He's done a couple trips. You did. You went to that one.
Oh, but not for work, just with the guys. There's actually a couple of guys from the group, the accountability group.
So, but I fully anticipate, like that I will be triggered. I know that's going to happen. I think
even if I'm just, the other night I was at the group, right? And I think you were a little triggered when I came home, and I don't know if that has anything to do with that or not.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think that I've had enough time to fully experience that, but I've had different feelings and things like that.
Yeah.
Like,
what's some of your biggest, go ahead.
Will you tell us a little bit about what compassion you connected to for him when he shared?
Oh gosh. Well, my first, I don't know. I keep saying first. There's a lot of feelings and thoughts swirling around in there. But I was like, oh man, I know what he's feeling like because I remember having to do this.
Yeah.
And so I think that was really important. Because I just told him like, hey, I know this was really hard for you. Like, thank you for telling me, even though it was really painful. And just, I think I'm trying to think back to that moment and being like, honestly, as painful as it was, it also felt like freeing because it was like, not that he made me ever feel like I had a debt or anything, but you know how we subconsciously put things on ourselves, where it was like, oh, like kind of like we're even in a way.
That's off my shoulders.
Sure, like unwillingness to talk about it probably felt like it was more due to that. And then you're like, oh, it was because of that.
Yes, that's true. Because I've like tried to get him to talk about stuff, and it's really interesting, like 2020. I remember we told our pastor about it. He was mentoring us and we were driving away and he was like, how did you do that? Like, how are you okay telling? And I you go back, you're like, oh, you were really just fishing because you really want to tell your story and you can't, and so.
I mean, I could have. But,
you could, yes, you could have. But I felt a lot of compassion because I know what it's like holding something in, and just being able to live in freedom again was really cool. And he's had like this terrible, like, back problems, like excruciating back problems. And I'm not saying it's tied to this, but I like realize, man, you're like holding in this like terrible thing. And like you said, you're eating away. And
it does make you wonder, at least, how is this impacting my physical health?
Right.
Just hanging on to stuff.
It hasn't been that bad since, you said.
Not perfect, but yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been. He's had a few things, but he was like a level 10 pain. He like couldn't even go up the stairs. That's how much pain he was in.
Yeah. Couldn't put my own socks on.
Oh. Man.
Which was also really hard on our marriage because I'm like, it's really hard, and which I'm sure you guys know because you've had your share of like sickness and pain where it's like you can't make you feel bad for being in pain, but also I'm carrying double load. We have 5 kids. So it was like this really hard dynamic.
Yeah, that was like 10 out of 10 pain around the clock, like nothing at all ever put a dent in it.
Right.
Wow. And it seems like it's put a major dent in it since you've shared. Does that feel like there's correlation there inside of that somewhere? Is what I'm hearing.
I'm not positive. Like, I don't want to make it sound too, like Disney ending, but
totally.
Like,
I get that.
I mean, to be honest, it was dealt with, I think, before that to some degree. Like, I wasn't in severe pain when we had this conversation.
Yeah.
So I just want to be.
I like that. Be honest.
I like the honesty of that.
Tell us some of the ways that you felt like it's actually been healing for you to walk through this.
Yeah. So I think too, I felt like it was because we messed up so bad, like when I messed up, we just shoved it down, covered it up, didn't talk about it. That's it. It felt like an opportunity to like walk through it in a healthy way and to actually get healing in. Like, so he meets with Marcus, I meet with Courtney. I've met with her for like over 2 years. And so, and it's been really cool this time around being able to let love in way sooner and actually learn how to clean it up and actually have tools to communicate. Like if I'm triggered about something that comes up, I can be like, hey, I just want you to know, like this reminded me of that. I'm not mad at you right now, whereas like without like in the past, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And so I feel like I'm not glad it happened, but I am thankful that it kind of brought healing to the whole picture and not, because now that pain that was buried from 16 years ago has been able to be brought up and kind of like processed through too.
That was true, like you're kind of, and I can sense when we can each sense when the other one's like, triggered or something like that. So that's just an emotional awareness that I think has grown as well. And so it's awareness and honesty at the same time, because you were able to say like, yeah, I am actually, and I'm feeling this way. And this is exactly why, like you knew why you felt that way. And I'm like, that actually makes sense. And we just had a frank discussion about it. And I don't feel hurt that you feel that way. And we can say, I love you at the end of that conversation. And that, isn't diminished by the fact that maybe we're not being like physically affectionate or acting like, as affectionate toward each other. Like we're just able to have these honest conversations about what's really going on.
That's amazing. What have you learned about yourself, Beardy?
Well, it's kind of funny because Jess, I think I kind of made fun of Enneagram for a while, but, I think I've learned a lot about how I operate, like as a 1. and how there was so much, that was one reason there was so much shame for me that was tied around everything was, that's hugely important for ones, right? We want to be right. Yep. We don't want to be the bad person, like all that stuff. So that was really, fueling, I think, just my shame and my unwillingness and inability to talk about it. Cause like, I'm like, oh, I'm the worst. I'm the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy. So I think, I have actually learned a lot about what makes me tick just kind of emotionally through this process as well. And that's definitely a big part of it.
I want to ask Justin another quick question. Was there ever a point, given Jess's history, that any of your actions, like when you were at war inside of yourself after participating in action, was there any place where you went into justification? Well, she, flipping cheated on me here. Was there any of that, or was it just personal shame cycle, or what happened for you?
There was definitely justification. So much stupid stuff. It sounds so dumb to say it out loud. Like, even like biblical stuff, like, I don't know, these guys were good. They had lots of wives, whatever, it sounds so, I know.
Well, no, but that's realistic. When we're in the middle of destructive cycles and shame, we come up with like, how do I actually justify the destruction that I'm participating in to get through it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had plenty of time to think of every stupid justification you can think of and actually believe it, which feels, kind of silly now, to be honest.
Well, yeah. And then on the other side of that coin, the question is like, were there times like when you came home from an interaction like that? I mean, what was that like internally? I'm asking this because I'm sure that there's a lot of people that relate who are trapped inside of cycles like this that are going like, probably need to hear even the parts of like, when I came home, this is what was going on in my chest, in my gut, in my emotions. Like, this is what I felt as I was looking at her in the face. Like, was there stuff like that you'd feel like you could elaborate on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and just, I think the last time is kind of the most fresh. So just kind of thinking about that, like I remember, and this is probably a good deterrent, but like the very next morning, it was like the worst feeling I can remember ever feeling in my whole life. Mm-hmm. So it's just like immediate, that I'm not even home at this point, and I already feel just like so much shame and like I'm the worst person in the world. And I really would like, I actually thought it was a dream, and I wanted it to be a dream, and was just like heartbroken when I realized that it was reality. And then, I remember that I came home and we like went to church, and I was, just like, heartbroken, kind of like went up and was like, so just feeling really repentant, I guess. Not so much that I actually wanted to tell my wife the truth at that point, but right. But definitely just like, begging for forgiveness from God. And
right.
And,
what was it like looking her in the face at times like that? Like when you'd interact with her, would it be like would you dissociate from yourself and just like disconnect from it altogether? Would it be eating you up when you'd be looking at her?
I probably would just like dissociate.
Yeah.
And there might have been different ways I would justify it. I mean, we, even more, I guess, recently, we were still not our healthiest selves, and there would a lot of times be fights around us, or if I was traveling, or just other unhealthy dynamics, I guess, said, like, well, I'm mad at you, so whatever.
Yeah.
But I think probably, and I don't honestly remember exactly, but I think I was probably just dissociating a lot. Yeah. That might be why I can't really remember that much now.
Well, and I wanted you to be able to communicate that, because I think that a lot of people who have been in your shoes, it's not like it's even part of them where they dissociate, you pull back, and you just like act like that doesn't exist at all whatsoever, just to survive the shame, the pain, the whatever that comes with it. And they need to know like, oh, that's actually a normal human reaction to that type of experience.
And at that point, like, I didn't want to be me. I hated me. There's a lot of self-hatred.
Yeah.
That's something I'm working through with Marcus as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, get me as far away from me as I can get.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And when we have self-hatred, we're looking for ways to numb that. What are some of the ways that you now can have compassion on yourself for why you did what you did?
Well, you know, I think one distinction that was important for me to learn was, and I've talked about shame a couple times now and how it's the worst feeling, and being able to reconcile, there's a different feeling that I should be feeling. I shouldn't be feeling, you know, unicorns and rainbows about this, but you know, like, guilt is an appropriate feeling. Yeah. Right. And then, but shame, guilt is that thing I did was bad. I should feel remorse. Yeah. That I did this
conviction.
Bad thing.
Right.
Conviction. Right. Absolutely. But shame is that I am bad. And that, you know, that's something where, you know, I mean, I've gone through exercises where it's like, you need to go back to that guy that did that stuff at that time in his life and find 15 things that you love about that guy. Like, I've walked through exercises like that with Marcus, you know, and that was tough, you know, but I'm like, well, you know, and it had to be not things that I was doing. That was another thing that I had to figure out. Like, well, he's providing for his family. No. Not things you're doing. Like, what do you actually love about that guy? Like, you know, oh, well, he's tenderhearted. He's, you know, so it has to be like character, heart qualities that were still positive, even in the midst of those. Yes. It's hard to come up with those. Even still, it's hard for me to come up with those. But, you know, that is, I think, a really powerful way that I've learned to love myself. Not even just now, not because I'm better now, but like I had to go back then and learn to love that guy. Yeah. You know?
That's really true. It's really true. What has it given you, for both of you, compassion for your story? Like, where has this helped you guys understand, like, even your childhoods and how they've impacted you more?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's given me a lot of, compassion for humanity. Like, I think as a seven, and I've been a pain avoider my whole life, and just like realizing that, like, my mom and dad did the things they did because of their pain, like, really helped me a lot. And I don't.
Where you stopped judging them so much.
Yeah.
Like, mom and dad were crazy. And then you're like, oh, they were in a lot of pain. Me and Justin have been in a lot of pain, and we have done things too. It was because we were stuck in a pain cycle.
Yeah. And it's been hard because family stuff has been really hard in the last couple of years. But when I was a kid, I was the caretaker, and I learned through all of this, like, oh, actually, that's not my job. And so it's been really hard, like, reconciling that with my family. And it's really interesting because I have two brothers and a sister, and they are, I love them. And like, because we were missionaries, our dysfunction just looks prettier. And so
they looked more like what is going on in their lives.
Right. So we couldn't tell anybody, but I felt like I couldn't, because I like had this image.
Burst the bubble.
Yeah. And so my brothers have both been through a lot of stuff. And I think going through all of this has really helped me to like actually have compassion and not pity, which I used to have a lot, which is so ugly, you know, where you're just like, I can save you, you know,
right.
And like,
I'm farther ahead than you. I think we've talked about it before in our Common Humanity episode on here. And we've talked about how Christianity kind of breeds that into you. And Christianity can be a way that people escape their pain and trauma, and they can just put it into, and it looks prettier moving across the world, taking care of people, but there's still tons of pain and heartache involved where you're like, oh, actually, we've all left with trauma from our childhood. We all are trying to figure it out. We're all messes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely given me a lot more compassion and the ability to connect a lot better, because it's not, and I mean,
I think just humility too, you know, how it talks about in Galatians, where it's like, you know, don't necessarily shy away from, you know, having these tough conversations with people, but, you know, approach it in humility and knowing that you could be affected by these same things. I mean, we know that, you know, so I think it gives us a big capacity for humility. I actually have a ton of humility. I'm really proud of it. I like to joke through my pain. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I hear you, brother. Amen.
Has it given you more compassion for your childhood story, Justin?
Yeah, to an extent, you know, I think and this is still something that I've really started trying to work through in earnest, again, kind of within the last year. But, you know, according to Marcus, I mean, there's still, you know, 16-year-old Justin is like trapped in a room somewhere screaming. And so we're getting there. I think we're peeling back the layers on that. I think there's some still left to peel back, quite honestly.
Totally.
Yeah. It's very easy within religion. I know that there's this concept of, you know, once I've been saved by Jesus and I just bury everything behind me and move forward because his blood covers all this stuff. And we bury these historic places in that mindset where we're actually trapped in, like you said, there's a 16-year-old little boy who's trapped in a very traumatic event that's back there that needs to be visited by love and by care. And, you know, having to get past that hurdle and go, hey, I need to go sit down in that space is a really difficult one, especially when, again, you have religious rules or religious environments that say, hey, it is what it is. And we also dismiss that stuff. So within religious context, it's just like, why are you acting out this way? You shouldn't act out this way, instead of like, hey, there's an entire history that's affecting the way that we think and the way that we feel and the way that we react. And a lot of times people feel a lot of shame for stuff, their actions that they feel out of control of. And I'm not saying that we're powerless to things, but there are things that are so heavily affecting us that we're going to continue to act out in those ways until we're willing to go back to that space and bring care and tend to it. So yeah, it's a lot, especially when I think about your story as a side note, like what an impactful moment of what happened with your mom and everything that would have led up to things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very easy within religion to dismiss that and just be like, why would you have, and anyone's story, not just religion, but a lot of people are like, why would you act out like this and do this behavior?
Well, and obviously then you have subconscious things where you would never, like you would decide, I never want to cause anyone pain. So your 9 comes out really strong. If you have my mom was suicidal my whole life. She never killed herself, but it was the same wiring, which is like, I have to make sure that I'm always making other people happy, or else it's really high stakes consequences.
Right.
It's my job to like offset. So causing people pain is catastrophic internally. So there's no way I'm going to tell somebody something that's painful. Like there'd be so many reasons for you to be terrified to tell her.
Right.
On a level that is like physical, like there, you know, your hard wiring says if you cause a woman pain, that could be the end.
Yeah. It could be catastrophe.
It could be catastrophe.
That makes sense.
Man. Yeah.
So there's so many, does that feel like an aha for you?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if like just having grown up with somebody who's suicidal, when you're talking about being a 9 and how you guys never fought and how you were the peacemaker and how every time there was a fight, you wanted to immediately fix it. It's because you learned that pain could lead to the highest stakes scenario.
Yes.
And you learned that your insides have been wired since, and I don't know, was your mom depressed before then? I don't know how.
Yes. Yes. For a long time.
How old were you when she started being depressed?
That's a good question. It felt normal to me.
You don't remember.
I don't actually even remember when it started. But I just have a lot of, very sadly, when I picture my mom, the first image that comes to mind is her just laying on the couch.
Yeah.
Cause she just laid around a lot cause she just wasn't happy. And, it was kind of like I referred to her as a hypochondriac, but I mean, and the reality was she was sick. It just wasn't like physical, you know?
So I'm listening. Also, obviously can connect because my mom was very depressed my whole life. But what I learned to do is, and I'm a one also. So what I learned to do is hate myself for anything that went wrong, because you're internalizing, because you're not going to, as a kid, you see that somebody's sad. It's not your first response always to blame them. So you can have compassion on them. And there's probably some frustration too. I had frustration too, but so then you learn, like, everything feels crazy out here. Hating myself is the one way I knew how to deal with my pain, trying to be perfect, trying to be in control, trying to make things happy, even you're joking. I am sure you learned as a coping mechanism to try to ease the intensity of what it was like being in that environment. So then you marry somebody who has a strong personality, and your whole body, mind, like your survival system is running your life, and it is telling you the one thing you have to do is make this woman happy. That's the one thing you have to do. And then sex is hard and you don't know how to figure that out, and she's unhappy. So now you're failing, and it's high stakes subconsciously.
And it's been reinforced. She has sex with another guy. So that's even reinforced. She's unhappy. Things are starting to spiral.
And so now I just have to keep her happy. I have to keep her happy. And when you dissociate from yourself to keep someone else happy, your soul ends up feeling unloved. Because it's not being seen, it's not being known, it's not getting connection. So now you have this huge connection hole inside of your heart that is just looking for some affirmation, looking for some woman to be happy. And when you're married to a 7, and there's no blame in this for 7s, but 7s constantly feel unhappy. Like the escapism is, this is not enough. Right now is not enough. So I need the next hit to look forward to. I need the next hit to look forward to. And so there's never a sense of, unhealthy 7s. Obviously you can be a 7 and overcome this, but I'm best friends with a lot of 7s. And this is what we do. We always have the next thing. I believe in the tri-types. I'm a 1, 2, 7. So I have a strong 7 wing. So but I'm always looking for the next thing I need to happen so that I feel okay in the present, the next thing that I'm looking forward to. And so all of this is combining. And then your terror over telling her is that little kid who's terrified of the repercussions of mom having another thing that is added to the plate, where she finally snaps, and you are in your soul terrified of what is the moment that Jess is going to finally snap. What is that moment? Because it's written into your DNA. When you experience it, it's not a logical thing. It is a survival skill.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I probably should have mentioned this earlier when Justin was asking about like the justification, but that was one thing that, and I've told Jess this too, like, I thought it would devastate her, and I didn't want to, I didn't think I could do that.
Yeah.
What were you feeling as Abby was kind of like maybe painting a picture and validating maybe some of the stuff? What were you feeling as Abby was sharing that?
I feel like she totally just read my mail, honestly. I'm completely unpacked. I think I'll just cancel the rest of my sessions with Mark. Just kidding. No, that was like, oh, wow. Hit the nail on the head, honestly. And some of that stuff I have never thought about before, but entirely rings true.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have Jess, who also grew up in such a high stakes environment, perform, do things perfectly all the time. Like you both grew up in shame cultures. And so it's a beautiful thing that you guys have both chosen love over and over again. And that I know, Jess, that your drive towards wanting to get emotionally whole yourself has created a place where you guys could actually face things like this.
Yeah.
Your ability to start owning your own triggers and owning your own pain. Like I could hear a lot of ownership from both of you about your own stories as you shared, like, oh, I've always tried to escape. Oh, I was leading this. Oh, hearing both sides of that. And it's pretty common when there is a person in a relationship who's terrified of hurting the other person, they often end up hurting the other person. Yeah. Because you can't avoid it. Yeah. The peacemaker often makes some kind of explosion because they can't dissociate forever. They can't be run over forever. They can't. And so I imagine that this will actually even impact. I think you guys are already so much more balanced, it seems like, in opinions.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And also, like, speaking of ownership too, it was really cool when, through working this out, it was like, I knew that I didn't have to villainize him to make my pain valid.
Yeah.
Right.
Which was really important. And even when I was meeting with Courtney, she was like, yeah, we don't need to talk about like how Justin's the villain. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't want to do that. I don't feel like that's going to help, because I know like I can own my part in this and he can own his part in this and he's still good. Like, yeah. I think that was really, I'm thankful that Courtney was able to not be like, oh, I can't believe he did that to you, right. Where it's like perpetuating it.
I also was deeply appreciative of that.
Yeah. Well, and then also, Jess, just feeling you being able to want to face your shame and want to be real and want to acknowledge what is going on. That's one of the ways that cycles get broken.
Yeah.
Is to begin to face and to say what is true and real. And it takes a lot of courage. And I remember you sharing your story for the first time in our life consulting group. And I think I remember you still having emotions about sharing it there, just in that small group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's not been something that was easy, because I think some people are like, oh, it's just natural for their personality to do that. And I think that it's been really cool that you guys are doing it. And one of the things I love about your story and why we chose to share this in the middle is I think a lot of people think it's just quick and done. Mm-hmm. Like forgiveness, kind of what you guys did the first time. Forgiveness. Yeah. You forgive and you move forward. Instead of like, we actually want to take time to look at these pieces, to look at how they fit together, to look at how, and we're going to take the time to do the work.
Well, yeah. And I want to add, I think that it's kind of like this idea of like, let's just forgive and move past something, rather than these messes that happen are actually the invitation to true freedom, because then they call us back into the places that are aching and in detrimental places that haven't experienced love. And now you're having to go all the way back to history and sit down with, say, the little boy at 16 years old who just lost his mom, and have to actually address that. And again, they're invitations to freedom. People feel like they're more inconveniences that have now caused them some sort of pain and problem. But again, it was an invitation. Unfortunately, messes become, it comes in the form of a really painful mess. But again, it's still the invitation to go to those spaces. And if we saw them as such, it wouldn't be such, like, I feel like the pain's different. It's not that the pain is gone, but the pain feels like something's been inflicted on us if there's not an invitation to it. Like there's just been this horrible thing that train wrecked my life versus like, hey, it was really painful and there was a gift that was being made available to me inside of it to repair things I may have never been able to connect to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to add too, I feel like when there's a cost as well. So like when it was just my story, I was like, oh, God can restore marriages, and like
totally
pain. I was the one inflicting the pain, And so at the end of my like video, I was like, so whatever you're going through, and I like listened back there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so empty because it didn't cost me to forgive. And so in having to forgive Justin, it then became from like my story to our story. And so while I'm not like, no one's ever glad that
totally.
But honestly, I feel like I can see the gift in it, that it has actually been able to kind of like help me to understand more what he experienced and just to bond us in a healthier way rather than just like I don't know. So yeah, but I feel like the cost was really important to learn that I had to forgive, and that now I can say, actually, you can get through this. I had to pay both sides, instead of just the one.
It is I think it's very much to your credit though, that the message is still the same after you were able to experience, after you walked through that pain on your side.
Yeah, that's true.
And we've learned these lessons the hard way, and we've seen, examples in our lives of not even just thinking about my mom, but young people. I mean, people that would pay the price with their lives before they would actually just to sweep something under the rug, literally with their lives, there's so much freedom to be found. And that's definitely something that we want to see for other people and maybe kind of help people not have to learn quite as, difficultly as we had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just feel really honored that you guys shared so beautifully, so authentically.
Yeah.
I can tell you guys were so connected to yourself in the midst of it. And this is a brutal story to share, but brutal in the sense it's always hard to share something in the middle of it. I think that's what we talked about on last week's episode about being messy, that Christians love to share things like 10 years down the road
on the other side of it completely
when it's like all done. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's something beautiful in sharing.
I've been there where I've wanted to share later on, like, I can talk about it now that I'm out of it.
And but there is something beautiful in like knowing like, hey, in the middle of it there's a lot of mess, but there's a lot of healing and beauty that can be found in the midst of it. So thank you guys for sharing. How do you guys feel?
Good.
I feel good too. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels good. And I guess I think I also just want to say, like, we are in the middle of it. So like, it's not like, for example, something I'll see on TV will like remind me of something. And it's like, it's really nice to be able to communicate about it. And it's like, I just wanted to reiterate, like being in the middle, it's like, we're talking about this so nice right now, but like, you know what, next week we might not be, And so I just appreciate having the opportunity to just be very honest and real about it, and just like that the healing process isn't over, but there is hope in the process. And when you lean in and walk toward it,
it's like the choice is always available to just not give up. And I think if we can get past what we got past and still keep at least trying, I mean, we're not winning every single day, but I think that really takes a lot of things off the table. Like, well, this happened. There's no coming back from this,
Right.
And I think it's a broad principle that can be applied a lot of places. I mean, there's a lot of people saying, oh, just forgive and forget. And that's just a way of like, it's this trite thing that they say of, we're just going to sweep this under the rug and pretend it never happened. And we're not going to address the mess. We're not going to actually deal with this. And we have learned that does not work.
No.
Or like praying the pain away also doesn't necessarily work.
Pray it away.
Can God heal? Yes, he can. But he also made our bodies, and he made our bodies the way he did. And when we don't process things, it gets stored there, and just kind of realizing that God actually wants to partner with us in our healing, that it's not like he wants to he can heal us in a moment, but like, it's so much richer partnering and like having the ownership, because it actually makes you feel like you were part of it and you have buy-in,
Yeah. I just want to say this before we close, and then any thoughts you have. But one of the things I loved is that you were like, I'm going to forgive and I'm going to go on the journey of healing and honesty, Jess. But you also had some boundaries. And I think that was really good, to be like, you need to be working through your stuff. You need to be honest with the men in your life. I can't be the only person. And I think that, not boundaries, and they didn't sound like they were out of punishment. It sounded like we need to get healthy. I just need
you to show up here. Yeah.
And I think that that's really important in the midst of betrayal, to have those boundaries, to be like, we have to create, we have to get health infused in here. We can't just do this on our own. And I like that you guys both went after getting outside help. And so I just wanted to say, I think that's really important for people listening, because a lot of times it's just push through. Right. Instead of like, no, you got to face all of the stuff. You got to learn why you did what you did. I think the greatest form of healing and reconciliation can come when you understand what was going on inside of you that got you to the place that you could do that, so that you can start making sure that your needs are met in a healthy way.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. I don't have a lot else to say, but I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you hitting some really scary moments in there, Justin. And
absolutely,
you're very brave.
Yeah, it was a really big deal that you got into that space. And I have so much compassion on both of you. I know that Abby and I have had our own big hurdles that we've had to walk through our own mess. And it's scary to share stuff in the middle of it. And I hope that people are listening going like, all right, I can start talking about the thing as it's happening. I don't have to get this all cleaned up and put back together before I examine my story with other people. And like you said, you guys aren't all super happy. You probably have really bad disconnected days where you're angry at each other, or resentful, or shut down, or just overwhelmed. And it's okay. You're going to get to the other side. And there's hope for everybody. Just because we make choices or mistakes that feel like they're the end of the world, because that felt like that for you, Justin, even, and it felt like that for you, Jess, early on, but it wasn't, and it's not the end of the world. And your relationship, your committed relationship, is an invitation to understand love for yourself, love for another person, love within the context of humanity, to understand compassion, to understand humanity in general. And it's really cool, the gifts that come out of choosing to be human together in all of the things that come with that. So,
yeah.
And I just want to add one thing to what you said, Justin, like about the mess. And it's like, if we're okay with being messy, hopefully we can talk to people before it gets to like a really big mess to clean up.
Absolutely. The more honest we get, the more freedom we have, the more, like, if you guys could have had people, you could have not had to go through this path. The more,
absolutely. And I think the alternative is basically just continuing to look perfect until everything you're holding inside just completely explodes and destroys whatever's most precious to you, honestly.
Yeah.
It's good. Get rid of your secrets. Also, if you're listening to this, we are talking a lot about compassion and learning that. We have a e-course called The Compassion Project that goes over how to start seeing and hearing and connecting to compassion for your own story. It's necessary to heal from anything, to be able to get reconnected into wholeness with yourself. So Justin and Abby, justinandabi.com. Get on our email list.
You can sign up there, and we'll let you know with stuff that's coming up in our world.
Go tell whoever you need to tell your secrets.
Yeah, and share this episode. If it feels like it's something that's really enlightening and freeing for you, make sure you get out and pass it around to people, because people are needing permission to get out of the hiddenness and the darkness. And brave stories like this help give us that permission.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Bye now.